Hey everybody, this is Mansant here with a new kind of video today. We're going to be testing what it's like to voice over some of the games that we play locally here at Odyssey Games in Michigan. So this game featured on stream right now was a game from Table 1 at the Armory that was played this past Wednesday. We've got Elliot on the right, who's a very competitive player, store owner of Odyssey as well. And then we've got Tom on the left, who's another very competitive player, I think this will be a pretty good matchup to show as well. This was during round 3. They were both 2-0 going into this round. Tom is a big fan of Ice Lexi. He plays it a lot in Classic Constructed, but this was his first time bringing it down to the Blitz level as we all prepare for this skirmish season. So I think this will be a pretty interesting matchup because we've kind of seen the threat that Ice Lexi can present against these very low to the ground aggressive decks like Lightning Briar. But in a matchup like Chain versus Chain, Chain is an aggressive deck, but he's actually running quite a bit of pitch, right? Because he's a deck that wants to be pitching quite a bit to play cards out of Banish. So I'm not quite sure whether the Frostbite strategy is going to be good enough to slow Chain down. I've never seen this matchup before. I was playing a bit further down. So yeah, this will be a good one to watch. So it looks like Tom started first. He is taking up his Tunic, and we'll get into things promptly. All right. So with an Ice Lexi build, we've seen a couple different weapons, right? We've seen people try Shiver for Dominate to make sure those hit effects land. We've seen Voltaire to great success at US Nationals, letting you just have these big go-again turns with your 3-of-a-kind. But I know Tom's pretty partial to the Death Dealer build still. It lets you play a bit more defensive because you're drawing a lot of cards, so you kind of can solve that ranger problem of I need to keep really big hands because that's the only way to shoot arrows. With the card draw from Death Dealer, that can kind of save you a bit, so it actually lets you block quite well. So with that, we see his equipment set kind of falling into that same strategy. He's got the Skullcap for extra block, the Bullseye Bracers for the utility there, the Tunic, and then the Perch Grapplers for the block as well. And he is coming in here with a, I believe that is a red Flake Out. So interesting. So even though this is turn 1 of the game, it looks like Elliot really likes his hand and is not going to block there. So he's taking 5 damage on turn 1. This is something you don't normally see, right? You normally see these big blocks coming out on turn 1 so that you don't leak damage since you're going to refill your hand anyway. So hopefully Elliot's got something big coming. And kind of the cool thing about playing into Ranger is that you know that they don't have a lot of go again, right? Like if they have go again, it's super telegraphed. It's not like they're going to do that from reaction or something because they're not playing Razor Reflex. So Elliot, seeing that he only takes 5, he knows that that's kind of the end of the turn, especially since Tom is not using the Shock Charmers, so there's just no additional damage coming out of that turn. So now we see Elliot's turn here, and let's see what he can pop off with. Elliot is running Rosetta Thorn, which is interesting because in Blitz, Chain can actually use Duskblade. But we'll see if this choice of using Rosetta Thorn kind of comes back to bite him, depending on how long the game goes. You know, Duskblade just gets incredible value. We can see here he starts out with an Art of War, so that probably makes sense why he kept his hand. Either it was all non-blocks, because we see Invert Existence and Art of War, those both don't block, or it was just the perfect Art of War hand, so he kept it for that reason. He's running the Skullcap for the extra block over the Ebonfold, which is interesting. You normally see the Ebonfold, but I believe this is a sideboard card that he's brought in to try to help against those hit effects that Ice Lexi has, so that makes sense. We've got Carrion Husk, of course, for the amazing block, Grasp for the amazing block and the Runechant utility, and then Spellbound Creepers, which is a really cool card, and I know Elliot has been a big fan of this card, so let's see what kind of tricky plays he can pull off with it, because this is probably his favorite card from this set. I know he was really hyped to start building decks around it. And of course, Chain uses it to fantastic effect because he's got all these extra playables out of Banished. So let's see what he's doing here. Looks like he banished, I believe that's a yellow Bounding Demigon from the Art of War here. Likely picked, actually not sure what he picked. Could have been +1, could have been go again. Depends how wide his hand can take him. All right. Plunder Run from hand. This is very, very aggressive. So this makes me think he probably picked Go Again on the bounding because he wants a wider turn, which is why you'd play Plunder Run here, because seeing a red Plunder Run in hand and not Arsling it is interesting. The other reason to do that would be because he wants the Rosetta Thorn swing this turn, so he needs to play a non-attack, right? So what we saw there, the Rune Chant was just resolved, so Tom's going to take that ping, and then we've got the bounding coming in. Alright, so this is something that you probably just block every time. You don't want to give Chain these card draws, because he'll just go wider and wider and wider. It's really hard to track how wide he'll exactly go because of the Spellbind creepers. He can just get these extra action points out of nowhere. And Chain at 2 cards is still pretty threatening. He is going to have to pitch something for the Rosetta. Oh, this is interesting. Tom decides to take the damage, and it looks like he took 3 damage. So that leads me to believe the Art of War had Go Again, because Bounding would have gained +1 from being played out of Banish. No. Maybe not, because he did Soul Shackle, right? So let's just see how this turn continues to play out. I've not watched this game back previously, so bear with me. We're just doing this commentary quasi-live. I'm not keen on re-recording it because editing these videos is taking longer than I thought. Alright, so looks like the Plunder Run draw was kind of irrelevant here if Elliott's just ending his turn with this Rosetta swing. Man, that is fortunate for Tom, because normally the extra draw would just mean your turn goes wider and wider and wider. So that leads me to believe he probably picked the +1 on Art of War, because otherwise he should have woven in something else there. Of course, pitching the Shadow Verser and Invert Existence this early is amazing, because you're setting up the bottom of your deck if you get that far into the game. It looks like if I peeped Elliott's hand, he drew into his second Art of War. So hopefully this is going to set up an even bigger turn for next one. Ooh, but of course we're starting with that good old Lexi reveal. Given Elliott a Frostbite, we'll see how much that hinders what Elliott's trying to do. That is a Channel Lake Frigid as well, so this could just be a turn where Tom really slows down the game, which is perfect because Tom is about to lead into his Tunic turn. So he's going to want to slow Chain down so that he can have a really good aggressive turn next hand. So looks like he's definitely got Ice Pitch, so he can play this Channel Lake Frigid and have it stick, but that may mean he loses the fuse effects on his arrows. That's always the tricky part with these arrow cards. So we will see. Yeah, I believe what I see in his hand there is 3 arrows and 1 ice card. So what he can do is start by not pitching an ice. There we go. That's exactly it. He's not going to pitch an ice, but then the tricky part becomes he will need to have an ice pitched by the end of turn. And if the last thing he does as part of his turn is attack, then he still needs to pitch that ice card. So let's see how he's doing it. Because he doesn't have the Shock Charmer. Shock Charmers is an amazing way to just, after a fuse, dump an elemental card into the graveyard. And I think that's the predicament he's in here. So that was a little interesting to go for that line. I know he's really prioritizing the fuse effects, but at the same time, it is pretty much guaranteed that to slow down the chain if he just goes for the channel stick play. So unless I'm missing some mechanic in Ranger that will let him pitch after having fused, I think he's just going to waste this Frigid. Okay, so yeah, I'm actually not even clear with what that card does. Perch Grapplers. I don't play Ranger. I play against Ranger quite a bit. It might, I believe it does something like gives face-up arrows Go Again, right? So that's a pretty heads-up play by Tom. It's going to expend a lot of resources, but what this is going to let him do is shoot the Chilling Ice Vein with Fuse into him pitching to... Yeah, I believe he can then pitch to shoot the second arrow. Yeah, because then he'll pitch the ice card that'll let channel stick, and he still gets another arrow off here. So he already used Death Dealer, but I believe Bullseye bracers can let you reload, so this just may be a huge committal of equipment to get this play off, which could be a bit premature. So Elliott here, considering the block. Yep, there's a very good hit effect on the Chilling Ice Fiend when it's fused, so makes sense to commit Husk, although this is very, very early. Interesting. He's probably doing this. Yep, there's the bracers play I talked about. Elliott's probably doing this because he has that Art of War in hand. So everything he can do to try to go off with that turn, he's probably making those choices. However, he's walked into the Channel Lake Frigid pretty poorly here, because Art of War means he's going to want to be taking a lot of actions next turn, and I doubt he can play through the channel the channel cost on like multiple things, right? Because Soul Shackle is going to cost, the Art of War is going to cost an extra, Rosetta is going to cost an extra, the next thing is going to cost an extra. So this may have just been a turn where he should have elected to just block from hand a bit more and try to wait out the Frigid, but we'll see how much that bites him. Alright, choosing a block here. As a Leviathan player, I love blocking with Ghostly Visit, but it's just not the same for Chain. Once he blocks that Ghostly Visit, it's out of his deck. Which he probably is going to miss a bit, because that is a great card to banish with Art of War. It's a great card to pitch for the second cycle, and he just, won't be seeing this one again. So that's the kind of thing with the Blitz games, though. You got to be very careful of the resources you expend, because the games are very quick, and they're also, in a deck full of 2-ofs. So when you decide pretty quickly to just, okay, I'm blocking with this card, make sure that you've made the decision that, okay, if I expend this one card, that is half of the entire amount of copies I have in my deck. So you do have to really think carefully about which cards you're blocking with. It's not just blindly throwing down cards to block 3. Alright, so what we saw there was the Soul Shackle 1. It banished a Sting of Sorcery. So no additional cards for Chain to play this turn. That's honestly one of the more frustrating aspects of Chain that I found when trying to play him, is that you can only plan your turns up to a degree, because you never know what you're going to banish with the Soul Shackles. So if you knew, if there was some like opt effect on your opponent's turn, if you knew what you'd banish, Chain would be even stronger than he already is. So I'm glad that doesn't exist in the game yet, but it can lead to some very frustrating decisions to be made. So as Elliott plays this turn, I think he may be noticing here by the hesitation that he has walked into a channel that did stick a turn, and this is going to screw up everything he wants to do. Soul Shackle is going to cost that extra 1. He's got the Frostbite as well. So yeah, look at that. That's exactly what I was talking about. He does not get to have the Art of War turn that he wants, because of the channel sticking and the Frostbite. So interesting how you played last turn then, to try to still pressure even though he can't do much with that channel in play. So he's going to hold the Art of War. Art of War in hand is going to hopefully set him up for another big turn next turn, but with the channel still in play, that just might not happen. And he is taking that Blood Debt trickle already. So if Tom can set up another aggressive push here, he is going to have Tunic at 3. He does have a full hand of cards, but he did expend those equipment pieces so early. I wonder if that's going to screw him. We do see that Tom is behind on life. He's taking these hits to try to set up his control strategies and lock Chain out of the game. But with Chain having the 1 Soul Shackle already, that is going to put Chain at that +1 hand size, basically, for the duration of the game. +2 when he picks up the next one. +3 on the next one. So Tom choosing to be very aggressive early game because he needs to get that advantage before Chain just has this massive hand size advantage. But if you look at how the life is so far, it's just not happening for Tom. The thing about these arrows is that they're not actually dealing that much damage. They're going to chip here, slow down the game, chip here, slow down the game. But you still need ways to actually close. And that is just going to be an issue. It is nice that Tom has already broken the Carrion Husk, so now the damage is more likely to stick, but Elliott still has a lot of blocking equipment up. He's got the Skullcap, the Grasp, and if he notices how hard it was to play through the channel last turn, then perhaps he actually goes a bit blocking heavy this turn. Ooh, whoa. a double channel Lake Frigid. Interesting. Well, this is the one of them is definitely sticking because we see the Ice Pitch already in there. And then, ooh, we see a fused Frostlock. So that's going to be coming in for 4, which is easy enough for Elliot to block. He does have the equipment up. But at the same time, if he notices that this turn is just one where he's going to be on the back foot anyway because of the channels, perhaps he doesn't use equipment and just decides to block from hand or even take the hit. So he does have knowledge of the, I believe, is a Polar Blast in Tom's hand. So he knows that he's going to have to fight through a Frostbite again next turn and at least one more channel potentially sticking. So this is looking good for Tom, but the other thing about Blitz, right, it's 2 ofs in the deck, and seeing one channel break and seeing the other one on its way out already means that perhaps Elliot can just wait out these turns and just start tracking the amount of resources Tom's already expent here to close out the game after these channels break. 1 Frostlock gone is also a big deal, right? So this is a lot of resources gone for Tom for really not that much damage yet. Oop! All right, look at that, another Soul Shackle whiff on the top there. That's Tome of Fyendal, which I know Elliot has been a huge fan of with the Spellbound Creepers. You don't get the action point back, but with Chain sometimes you don't even need that extra action point. You just need the cards in hand, and that's what Tome can do for you. It's just extra card draw, which is fantastic. And of course, it's not spending your action point because it's played at instant speed, so it's just net card draw, which I know he's a big fan of. So Elliot here, considering his options. He blocked with a Riftbind from hand, so once again, he is kind of stuck with an awkward Artivore, I do believe. Riftbind would have been a great thing to banish off the Artivore for the draw, but of course you do need a lot of things to line up for that. You do need the non-attack action to be able to play the Riftbind, I believe. Or no, you can still play the Riftbind, it's just not going to gain the pluses. Right, so taking another relatively slow turn, perhaps. So he had to pay for the Soul Shackle because of the channel, which is just lovely. I love that it's buffing those costs on everything that these go wide multiple action point heroes are trying to do. And it's a bit different than some of the other control effects we've seen, right? So like Bravo, when he hits you with Spinal Crush, you just don't get Go Again. Well, versus a channel like Frigid, you can Go Again as much as you want, but you are going to be taxed heavily. So Elliot already committed to the Soul Shackle. He's got the floating resources. But what's the rest of his turn? We do know, I think I saw a blue Vexing Malice and the Artivore, and I don't know what card's in his arsenal. So if he tries to go for Artivore, he's banking on drawing really good cards off the top because he is going to be out of resources playing the Artivore to banish the Vexing. So that doesn't seem like the right play here. It could just be make a Rune Chant, swing Rosetta, and hold that Artivore once again. But I fail to see if that's really going to be enough pressure to close the game, because Tom's back on the front foot, didn't spend his Tunic resource, has the channel in play, and has that Polar Blast in arsenal, which is going to cycle a card and give his next attack a Dominate. So how does Elliot get out of this? Will we see that arsenal card played? It better be a good one. Alright, still thinking here. Elliot is a very calculated player. Okay, there we go. So he is going to hold the Artivore, right? This is going to chip arcane damage through because Tom at this point has broken some of the arcane barrier that he had in play. So that likely goes through unless he decides to pitch to the Skullcap because he is lower on life. Okay, yep, exactly. So he's going to protect his life there, take the 1 physical. How cute is that? And once again, Elliot gets to hold that Artivore. He is going to take 1 Blood Debt as well. Hopefully he remembers that. There we go. Good job, my guy. So taking that Blood Debt trickle. Funny enough, the damage that's really been dealt was that turn 1, right? I was talking about that, and that chunk of 5 has pretty much been it. So here we go. Polar Blast coming in. Beautiful extended art that Tom won here from participating in our Armory events at Odyssey Games. So this is the choice on Elliot here. Does he give the attack Dominate or let it go through, or rather pay for it to cancel the effect? He already sees that there is an ice pitch in the pitch zone, so a second one is going to mean he has to play through a channel turn again. So not paying for the dominate means he could really just get interrupted with everything he wants to do this turn. Alright, Death Dealer, going to come in again. Looks like Tom has quite a bit of ice cards in hand, 2 of them. But the question becomes, what's the better one to keep in Arsenal? I believe it's a Polar Blast in hand, so that's going to be the one he likely keeps to Arsenal. Meanwhile, he can pitch the other one to shoot and fuse with that Polar Blast. But this is the problem with the amount of damage that a deck like this can put out. Excuse me. Excuse me. My goodness. Especially in Blitz, because without a lot of go again, the game is just not going to end as quickly as Tom is going to want here. Because Chain is going to just thrive off these shackles the more turns he gets to cast them. There we go. So we see another red arrow coming in. That is the one with Dominate. It is going to create a Frostbite on hit. It's got Dominate because of the Polar Blast. It's got Frostbite on hit because it was fused. Elliot's already staring down 1 Frostbite, staring down the channel. He can't effectively use the Skull Cap to block 5 here, 3 from hand. He doesn't have the Grasp. He doesn't have the 2 block on the Skull Cap. And I doubt he's going to commit the Creepers. So this is probably just a very bad next turn for Elliot. Just going to take damage, be stocked up on all the Frost, and take a slow turn again. So let's see. Definitely might as well block just to preserve some HP. He's blocking with a 2 block, however. Howl from Beyond, another great card to block with in Levia. But once again, Chain is not going to see that unless he plays an Unhallowed Rites, right? So, with that gone, it's going to be back to Elliot. Channel is sticking, and he gets 2 banishes off Soul Shackle, which perhaps is the saving grace here. He's whiffed on all the other Soul Shackles previously, but if he hits 2 here, then he might actually have a decent turn. We're looking for like a 1 cost. But nope, 2 whiffs again. Scar for Scar and Shadow Puppetry. Scar for Scar, very interesting card for Chain List. I'm not sure I've seen that. It's definitely been in other Runeblade decks. Of course, Briar's been playing it to great effect. Makes some sense in Chain. You just are going to be pitching so many resources into other things these days, like the Spellbind, the Howls. You might as well have more 0 cost. But you see the downside of potentially running cards like that is that it adds more whiffs to Chain with the Soul Shackles. But, decks do have to compromise. They can't just run max copies of Seeds anymore. Thank goodness. So yeah, weak turn. Weak turn. Double Frostbite, Channel. All he did was swing Rosetta. It was pretty miserable for Elliot there. And we see this continued lock going. Life totals are really not changing as much as you'd expect with a Chain player on the table, right? Here comes the Polar Blast again. Elliot's probably just going to take the Dominate, although he may be wishing that the Carrion Husk had stuck around, because now it could really bail you out on a better pivot turn, knowing that the Channel Lake Frigid is about to break, most likely. This could be that big swing turn where you commit Husk to really make sure you're on the front foot next turn. However, he committed it early and has taken about 3 life for it as of now. So we are just going to see the game as it is. Looks like Tom is going for a 3-of-a-kind turn. Interesting once again in this deck. I mean, you're lacking the go again, right? So you get to draw a lot of cards, but you also don't have the Shock Charmers. So what are you doing with all these extra cards in hand since you can only play from Arsenal? Seems like there's just not much to do. Like we're seeing his hand now, he's got another 3-of-a-kind, he's got a couple arrows, he's got Ice Pitch, but we're only looking at his ability to play 1 more arrow this turn, so these cards are effectively wasted. Unfortunate, unfortunate. This is when the beauty of Voltaire comes into play, right, in these Ice Lexi builds, because traditionally you're just going to go for the +1, but then when you draw these big 3-of-a-kind turns, holy moly, you can go off with like 2, 3 arrows sometimes, and threaten all kinds of hit effects across the board. So we're seeing that issue of Death Dealer just really allowing only 1 shot. He's not running the snapshots in this build, otherwise we could see a big train coming for that. But I know Tom is not on that type of Ice Lexi. So here we go. It's just going to be a arrow shot. Really not that threatening. I mean, you know, it's not presenting lethal on Elliot, and he's tracking that the Channel Lake Frigid is likely to be broken this turn, because what else can Tom pay with? I believe that is 2 ice cards in pitch and then 1 arrow. So the channel is going to break. Yeah, there's just nothing else he can pitch into to try to keep it there. Awkward, awkward, awkward. This is why you know, Ranger is cool and all. I love that other people experiment with it, but it's not going to be a deck that I try to play anytime soon. I already punish myself enough playing Levia as much as I do. And Ranger just feels like a deck that should be a lot better than it actually is, because it's not just threatening to kill itself every turn like Levia, but it just has these awkward hands. And like we saw at Nationals, right? This amazing top cut for our Ice Lexi player. He could have just taken the entire bracket, but got unlucky with that 3 of a kind, just didn't draw a arrow. And that's just, oof, that just hurts. And that is just what happens sometimes. So actually, this was an interesting point in the game. So I'm the judge for our local events, level 1. So Elliot took me to the side and wanted to consult on a ruling. His question was about Soul Reaping, which he actually has in hand at the moment. Very, very nice to have drawn that card, not banish it. And he was asking me about how the replacement effect works with Frostbite. Does the Frostbite cost... yeah, so like with a replacement effect, right? Soul Reaping you can play for effectively, you know, gaining resources rather than paying for it at all. But can you still do that with a Frostbite in play? Or does it even work in some inverse fashion where you play the Soul Reaping and then the Frostbite breaks on the resource you would have gained? He just had a question about how that works. So the way it works is that if you choose a replacement effect, then that becomes the cost of the card. Frostbite just adds the +1 on that cost. So if you play the alternative cost for Soul Reaping, you still need to pitch a card first to break the Frostbite. So with me telling him that, he proceeded with a new line here, because he was going to change things if that didn't work the way he thought. So he also forgot to take the Blood Debt, so there he goes, taking that down. Well done. So far, I don't believe we've seen any rules violations, which is great. We love to see that. Clean games played at Odyssey Games. All of us are, you know, we tend to be pretty good people. No one's trying to pull the veil over anyone's eyes. And we're also very open to new players. We had a brand new player actually win the entire Armory event 2 weeks ago. Her first game was... her first tournament was with a Viserai deck in Classic Constructed, and she clean swept. So shout out to her, Melita. She won the Rosetta Thorn, which she promptly put into her Viserai deck, so we love to see it. So here we go. Tom is attacking with that Blizzard Bolt. It's threatening the Frostbite. And looks like Elliot is electing to block just 1. Interesting. So obviously the attack's not lethal. He's blocking 1. Not sure why that damage threshold super matters. He could have potentially waited to get a 2-block value out of Skullcap. But without expending a card from hand, Elliot's probably going to have a great turn here because the channel's gone. Okay, so look at that. Oh, it was double red Plunger Run on that first hand of the game. No wonder he played the first one. That is pretty incredible. Okay, so we're reordering things here. Oh, that's right, because of the Soul Shackles. And look at that, finally rewarded with a hit on 2 cards here. So, let's see what the play is. It's still Plunder Run. He still has to break the Frostbites, right? So he's pitching a yellow Captain's Call to play that 0-cost Plunder Run. This is going to be big. Tom used the Perch Grapplers without getting the 2 life out of it. So he is probably hurting for extra blocks right now. And look at that. Soul Reaping's alternative cost comes in. He's actually gaining a resource. What the heck, game designers? That is so much stronger than how Soul Harvest works in Levia, please. Man, I do love to see that card on the table. You don't always see it as a chain player, or as a chain opponent, because it gets banished a lot of the time. But man, it is good. So coming in for 6, it's got Go Again because of the Soul Shackle. It's got +3 because of the Plunder Run. It's threatening the draw. He's got Unhallowed, Howl, Invert, all in the Banish Zone. My goodness. Still 1 card and 1 pitch left. Still the Rosetta being able to threaten 2 and 2 here. There's a lot of choices for our friend Elliot. Ooh, so look at that. On declaration here, we're going to see the Blizzard. So it's going to make some hard choices for Elliot. Does he let it lose Go Again, or does he pay 2 to let it keep Go Again, and then we continue on with how Tom would like to block? Alright, so he's paying 2. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Art of War, all it was really going to do that turn was go into paying for other things, or going to Arsenal. Oof. Oof, look at that. That is a hand of very poor blocking cards. Tom is taking 3 from that attack, even with a take cover, a 2 block. So what is that, 6? And, no, isn't he blocking 6? Why did he take 3? I'm unclear on this. Okay, I may not be following what just happened, but it looks like Tom got rid of a Polar Blast in hand. I'm not sure why, what that was for. Because he's blocking 6 on board. He used the Blizzard. So, yeah, what did that Polar Blast go towards? This may be... Oh, or is it double Blizzard? Oh, okay, you know what? I think it was double Blizzard. That's what that was. So he's making it lose Go Again no matter what. You know, Elliot can't pay for that. That makes a lot more sense now. He did draw the card. And then he is going to Arsenal, right? So he played that Invert Existence. Okay, I'm totally following now. Because the Go Again was lost, he can't take another action, but the Invert Existence is an instant, so he was able to cast that with his last floating, and then that card he drew is now going to Arsenal. And he basically time-walked Tom here. Tom is just going to probably give a Frostbite, yep, and then pass his turn. Elliot is at 3 life because he took 3 blood debt on that last turn. Tom's also at 3 life, but oof, just hurting for some extra blocks here. He's also not able to use Skullcap in this position because they're tied on life. He also forgot his Tunic. What the heck, Tom? So, wow, what an interesting game this has been. I believe 2 Soul Shackles were just missed because of all the extra cost that Tom was applying early game, but we see how those cards, that effective hand advantage just overwhelms poor heroes like Lexi, who are so card dependent and hate to block. So Elliot should probably win this turn. I believe time had actually just been called on Tom's last turn there when he passed over, so this is going to be turn 0 on Elliot, and then I believe turn 1 on Tom, and then the game's over. So it is very likely that Elliot just shuts it out here. Oh, wow. Yep, this is going to be disgusting. We're already looking at minimum 2 cards being able to be played that will proc Sting a Sorcery because of the Shadow Verser and the Unhallowed Rites, and Tom likely can't block all of that, and then he'll just die to Rosetta or Rune Chant. So that is already looking like lethal from just what we can see, but of course there's more cards we don't know. Cards in hand, cards in Arsenal. Man, this is just looking terrifying. So here we go. Shadow of Ursa. Just giving it Go Again. Casually, you know, just gaining an advantage over your opponent and giving things Go Again. How great. There comes the Sting of Sorcerer hit. So this is going to make Skullcap live. I doubt it really matters, but that is an extra bit of block for Tom here on this turn. He's blocking with an Invigorate. So it looks like that was kind of Tom's plan in his deck build here, how to deal more damage. It was going to be through drawing tall effects, but you know, Invigorate isn't going to work when you play cards like 3 of a Kind. So that's a little bit of a questionable inclusion, I think. But we shall see how this plays out. Another Soul Shackle coming in. This breaks the combat chain, but not super relevant. Then we've got a Bounding coming in with the Sting again, and yeah, this is just going to be game, I do believe, because to survive this next swing, whatever it may be. It's probably going to be Howl into unhallowed rights. That is just going to be too much for Tom's poor hand to handle, because he'll have to pitch into the Arcanite Skullcap, which would require an entire blue. And then, yeah, not likely with 2 cards in hand, and only 2 block left on the board. And then, of course, if he does somehow survive, he's just on the back foot in all entirety anyway. So Tom may be hoping that Elliott messes it up here and just dies of Blood Debt, which is possible. He's got Tome, which he's likely not... Oh, he is going for. Yeah, I guess actually he could go for Tome. He's got the Spellbind Creepers up still. So we could be seeing even more plays come out of Elliott. There we go. Spellbound Creepers activated. Yep, to play the Tome. So drawing an extra card, just guaranteeing game over pretty much. Alright guys, clean up this combat chain. Oh well. Here we go. So that is the play that we already saw. I guess he was just fishing for more resources. And boom, it is over. Alright. Well, that was a great game. Had a lot of fun commenting. And hopefully more videos like this will be pushed out in the future. Maybe some Levia games with my voiceover. That'd be pretty fun. So yeah, with that, this was Mansat. Hope you enjoyed.